is an Unspoiled Network podcast.
This is Spoil Me, covering Fullmetal Alchemist, Brotherhood. Episode 37, The First Homunculus. In this episode, we meet Pride. We meet Pride. We meet fucking Pride. And everything is a lie. All the time, forever. I am over suspicious, but still not suspicious enough. Welcome to Spoil Me. Welcome to the show, everyone. I am Natasha. Thank you very much to Max for commissioning this episode. Max, how do you sleep at night? Just how? How do you do it? Y'all, I truly cannot. This motherfucker's child is older than him. I should have known. I shouldn't have known. I really shouldn't. Like, there are times where I feel like all the clues were there and I just wasn't putting them together. There were not clues here for me. If there were, they're the kind of clues that you only pick up on a rewatch because you know already. But it does not feel like the kind of thing where I'm like, wow, I really overlooked. No. This child is older than all of them. And it never even occurred to me that he was related to one of them. I thought he was unrelated to both of them. It's sort of funny that his wife even mentions that he's related to his father, because I don't know if that's common knowledge at all. I feel like she mentions it freely enough that it should be more common knowledge than it is. But it doesn't really matter in the end. It just seems like the kind of thing that people would mention. Oh, but he is his, I don't remember if she says that. Does she say that he is meant to be his son from like a previous marriage, or just that they're related in some sort of unspecified way, like could be a nephew or something like that? Oh my God. Erica says, did your ears prick up when his mother said he's the pride of my life? They sure didn't, Erica. They sure didn't. This poor woman doesn't know about what a joke her own sentence was. All right, let's get into it. Let's start from the beginning. So the scene opens with Winry working on Ed's arm and fixing all of his automail for the North, and yelling at him for the fact that he didn't let her know sooner, and him explaining, well, we were in a hurry. And she's like, yeah, you guys are always in a fucking hurry. Like, literally, what does that matter? That's never... You have to start accounting for that as a default situation for the two of you, because that's how you always behave. And as they're talking, Kimberly comes in and is just like, oh, it's just a mistake in communication. And she says to him, thanks a lot, Mr. Kimberly. These two sure are lucky to have you watching out for them. Bitch. Ugh. Girl. She has been so thoroughly played. It sucks, man. This is one of those things that nobody wants to admit is actually how we work. Everybody wants to act like that works on other people, but it wouldn't work on me. But there is a reason why certain cons are so consistently successful. And one of the things a good con artist does is something called mirroring, which means that they will pretend to be very much like their mark. And they will say things in a similar cadence. They will have the same interests, allegedly. This is something that good salespeople can also do. Like, let's say you're buying a truck and somebody mentions that they want it to pull their boat behind them. And they say something about how, like, oh, well, when you go fishing, I want something. And the salesperson will be like, oh, yeah, my dad used to take me fishing every summer, and he had a truck that was kind of like this one, you know, was small or whatever. They will make that up. And they never had a boat in their life. But by finding a point of communication that feels like you've got something really in common that's specific, it gives you a sort of sense of bonding with them in a way that is like subconscious. And you find yourself sort of thinking about them as if you're on the same side. And I know for me, as somebody that is like already has a tendency to like be a little too, what's the word I want? I definitely don't like to let people down. I'm a people pleaser, I guess is what I'm looking for. This kind of attempt to bond with me works really, really well. It's extremely effective. I will not even play. Like, I already want to leave people a really good tip. But if they, you know, see like my hair and they're like, oh my God, I'm about to dye my hair purple, blah, 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 blah. I am going to leave them a bigger tip. It's just going to happen. I'm not even going to try and lie about it. That is absolutely how I function. So what Kimberly does is he's like, here's a girl who's grieving over the loss of her parents. There's a whole like awful tragedy in her past. What I'm going to do is act as if it has affected me as like in a similar way as it has affected her, that it sort of haunts me and I can't believe how terrible it was. And I'm going to give the impression that we both have the same kind of conscience and the same regrets. And my failure to save her parents is something that will be like a part of me and my guilt for the rest of my life. And that shit is really effective. This is also, just to mention this, the kind of thing that abusers do when they want folks around them to believe them over the victim. They will use this kind of thing to cement that they are trustworthy to folks who don't even really know them that well, and make it seem as if, well, that guy couldn't have done that. He just told me how sorry he was about my parents' death. He would never, you know. And this is part of the reason why this whole thing with like Depp and Heard is so fucking frustrating, because the man is a fucking actor. That is like his literal job, and everybody is just, I'm not going to get into it, but it's really fucking annoying. So this dude has completely won Winry over by the time this episode starts. And he has done it in a way that I know that she will believe Ed and Al because she trusts Ed and Al more than anybody. And like she has faith in their judgment because of the shit that they have already been through. However, I think if it were anyone other than Ed and Al trying to be like, Kimberly's a fucking psychopath, it would not have like sunk in. I think she would still have a lot of doubt around it. It had to be somebody that she really like trusts more than almost anybody, I think, other than Pinnacle. And it's just a really scary thing how easy it is to get won over by somebody, especially when they are out of context. and all you have to go by about their behavior is what they are showing you right in front of your face alone right now. So, yeah, this moment is just so frustrating. And Ed has to like lay there and just sort of be like, yeah, super lucky, and tries to kind of keep his cool. And then, as he's thinking about how he doesn't want her to be hurt by this, he begins to think about the fact that, what is her name? Was it Hughes' wife or was it Hawkeye that said that Ed was in love with her? I can't remember which of them it was, or was it either of them? I thought it was one of the two of them, but I may be wrong about that. But this enters into his head, and it's still like he doesn't want to admit that it's true, but then he starts to get incredibly like awkward and self-conscious in a way that indicates that it is definitely true. And he is aware somewhere inside that it's true, and he isn't willing to really face it yet. So this just becomes like him reciting the periodic table to himself in order to distract himself, because he has become so like self-conscious suddenly. And I love that Winry over on her side says, why'd I have to fall in love with such a weirdo? And I love this, that she is like, she has come to terms. I kind of was under the impression that Winry was still going to be like, am I falling for him? I feel like I might be. But she has basically decided she is, and like accepted it and just kind of continued to move forward. And so that gives a little bit of hope, because Ed clearly cannot handle it at all. I will say, once again, I really want Winry to be with Al. Al is too young at the moment, but give it like 5 years and it would be fine. But that's fine. Whatever. So yeah, this little moment, he's like, what, did you say something? And she's like, no. And then she just like tightens the fucking like nerves on with a bolt, and he like hits the ceiling, and she's just like, yeah, shut up, which was pretty funny. So yeah, Ed is like, wow, this is really light. Is this going to be weaker? And she says, it's slightly weaker, but I doubt you'll notice. It's heavily reinforced. And this is when Buccaneer comes in. And he gets in Ed's face a little bit. And Ed is like, dude, I'm getting the upgrades that you were telling me I needed. And he has his like rad claw and is showing it off, very proud. And Winry sees it and loses her goddamned mind. It is so... It's the M19 Mad Bear lightweight combat model! And we see her in this like long gown with stars around her. Is that reinforcement on the claws? They're not diamond tipped, are they? And this guy starts sweating and then gets all smiley. Yeah, she's fully modified. It's a specially crafted model. And she just goes, ah! Like she's meeting a boy band. And she asks Ed if he wants an upgrade like this, and Ed says it's not his style, and she's clearly super disappointed. And then it has to get a little creepy, because it always has to get a little bit creepy, doesn't it? Buccaneer, a man who looks like he's at least 20 years older than this girl, says, who's the girl? She's too cute to be hanging around you. And Ed says she's my mechanic. She smiles at Buccaneer and bows. He gets irritated and then decks Ed and walks out growling how life isn't fair. Look, I just need there to be an anime that I cover that doesn't have a super young girl being lusted after by somebody who really ought to be more of a father figure. Is that out there? Is that anywhere? I really would like it. There's a whole thing in One Piece where a girl flashes everybody for fun, which is her right, of course. But those people include the father of her friend who is with her, who, of course, they all get a nosebleed, including him, and the camel also gets a nosebleed. So that's a thing that we can have, is horny camels that want young girls. Look, we don't need a man beating up a kid because he's jealous of that kid's teenage mechanic. We just don't need it. Okay? That's all I'm saying. There's no need at all. And I don't want to see it again. I don't like this old man looking down at her with his fucking like rosy cheek. Oh, she's so cute. Shut up. Nope. I was willing to overlook the she's too cute to be hanging around you. But then when he loses it and punches Ed, I'm just like, wow. We're just going to make the subtext text. Okay, cool, fine. Anyway, so she says something about how it's the first of this kind of northern automail she's seen. And then that guy who's always hanging around with the like spiky hair, sucking on a lollipop, tells her that he has like a whole workroom over here if she'd like to see it. And she immediately jumps at the chance, and you can see that Ed is both a little bit irritated that she's going to immediately like run off and hang out with some other dude, and also anxious because she is in danger and she doesn't know it, and she's out here just acting like she's on vacation. So there's a combination of things happening there, but you know. So he watches her go, and then we hear her like talking about, oh my God, are you serious? You have this and that. And Kimberly then comes up to Ed and says, I see she's got her parents' enthusiasm. And I was like, that is a messed up thing to say right now, sir. So he tells Ed, why don't we go find a place to sit down and chat now that this is out of the way? Because we really have a lot of business to discuss. Al, meanwhile, wants to know why he's being kept in the cell, and the guard tells him that's where Kimberly wants you. We were given specific instructions that you are meant to be kept in here away from the Fullmetal Alchemist. And Al, in a moment of good insight, has a moment of like, oh, he's keeping us apart because they know what we're capable of when we're together, because they see us as a threat. And I really loved this for Al, this moment of like, I think I really underestimated how afraid of us they are. Maybe not afraid. He says, I think we make them nervous. But yeah, this like moment for him, I felt like was a really nice bit, because I wasn't getting that. And he's, you know, that then he continues with, by bringing Winry up here, they're just reminding us they've got collateral. I'm like, well, that for sure, yes. But we go then to the hole in the ground, the secret entrance to the tunnels. And Armstrong is talking to Buccaneer, and he is saying basically, look, we don't know what's down there. Something is clearly very wrong. If we're not back within 24 hours, you need to seal this entrance up with concrete. She agrees. But I feel 24 hours isn't quite long enough. Like, you don't know how deep they've gone. It just felt to me like we were jumping the gun a little bit. I understand wanting to have some sort of guarantee that they're going to try and protect themselves back there, but it just felt for me like, I don't know if that is really the way to go with this, but whatever, it doesn't matter. Somebody mentions the potential for the men to go mad because they are in total darkness for so long. And she says something like, my men aren't afraid of the dark. But I feel like she wasn't really thinking about the implications of it for an extended period, potentially, if your fuel for like the lanterns and stuff that you're using goes out. But yeah, these dudes heading down there, I was genuinely nervous for them because they don't know just how easy it was for the other crew to get taken out completely. And when they get down there are two dudes who appear to have escaped with their lives. And I will tell you what, I am not trusting this. If there was only one of them, it would be like a guarantee for me that one of them was Envy or something, because how did they escape? Like, why did they escape? One of them may be Envy. I don't know if there's like an Envy and then there's the guy Smith who had been on horseback, because we saw the darkness sweep in front of him and we didn't actually see him get like impaled the way that we saw the other soldiers get impaled. So it is potentially that there's a Smith and an Envy in here, but it just felt like, why are these people being allowed to survive? There is no good reason unless there does not seem to be a way to escape this thing unless it wants you to, is really what I want to say. So I have my eye on them. That's all. And these dudes like are in a fucking state, and they keep trying to tell him to put the light out. It's coming. Put the light out. Which I thought was really interesting, because what they're implying is that if there are no lights, then the dark is not, it's not actually shadow. It's only dark. In a way that makes it sound like maybe he can't work in total darkness. You would think somebody who is a shadow, being in total darkness would be his exact domain. But from the way they're saying, like, you have to turn it out, it made it sound like either the shadow doesn't work when there isn't light, or the light draws its attention. Unclear. But it was just an interesting, and we see the eye open in the tunnel and begin to head in their direction, and the little hands head in their direction. And then all of a sudden, the eye glances in the other direction, and it retreats, and all the little hands retreat in a moment that is very sudden. So then when we go over to Hawkeye, she is delivering a message to the Fuhrer, and she is talking to his wife, and the weird shadow comes up behind her, and she gets this like creeped out feeling. And all of a sudden, that was when it clicked for me, like, oh, he is the thing. And he was in the middle of like gonna fuck these dudes up for the sake of it. And then Hawkeye at the door distracted him, and so he stopped. And he went to see who was at the door. He just basically was bored, is the vibe I'm getting. It doesn't seem like there's a particular reason for killing these dudes any other than to just to do it. Why not? I don't know. Maybe I'm wrong about that. I don't know what his goal is in particular. So I'm going to get there. I have to back up a little bit, because first we have, there's a moment with Armstrong instructing all of her men, saying, I need you guys to know that I am going to be taking full responsibility for what happened to Raven. So if they come to you and they have questions, you didn't see anything, you didn't hear anything, you didn't do anything. And if they put together that he is actually dead and they need to slap it on somebody, I am taking it, and I don't want anybody trying to say anything about it. I am going to be taking full responsibility. And they all agree to this. I can't help but wonder if they will really stick to it, because a big part of me feels like they are so loyal that they would want to defend her, even though they know that's actually disloyal, since they promised they wouldn't. But gotta take the risk, I guess. I really also like... Guys, let me know if I've missed it. Has there been another female soldier in this place at Briggs this entire time? It didn't really like hit me until watching this episode that General Armstrong seems to be the only woman here. And I may have missed another like kind of background character woman, but I don't feel like I have seen a soul around. I don't know. Candace says, wasn't the mechanic that worked on Al when he first arrived? Yeah, you're right. Okay, there's one. Because I was just kind of like, it's weird that we're going to have like a woman who's in charge, but then we're not going to have any other like inferior officers who are also women. How is it possible for her to rise in the ranks if there are so few? It just doesn't feel like that would even, but yeah, Candace says 1, numeral 1, correct. Yeah, this is one of those things that like, this is another thing that kind of will get me and stuff where we'll put a woman in like a position of authority, but then we have no other women in the whole thing. Like this was also a thing that I just ran into with One Piece and other properties as well, actually. And it's just always weird. It's like, you want me to believe that women are so underrepresented and yet one of them could still ascend to this level of authority. I don't see those things being actually like compatible with each other, but what do I know? It's fine. So then we get Roy, and he is talking to this old lady on the street who he's buying flowers from. Candace says, we gave you a mean lesbian. What more do you want? That's Ultra Woman, right? Is she a lesbian, Candace? Or is that just your headcanon? I'm willing to accept. But, just saying. So anyway, okay. Roy is talking to this old lady. And they are giving him like the updates on what is going on up at Briggs. That their strong suit is defense. And even though things sound like they're getting out of hand and they could use a little bit of help, he in particular is invited to jump off the nearest bridge, which honestly was taken with a lot more grace than I expected. I really thought it was going to be him, like that he would like react really angrily to it, but instead he just goes, yeah, all right. Like he expected that. And part of me feels like that's ex-boyfriend vibes, which is part of why. So Candace is saying to me she is. Okay. There is something about her just being like, fuck Roy, that I'm like, that's personal, man. Did they have something? Was there a thing going on with them? Like, that feels like she is salty in a way that, because otherwise he has proven to be pretty capable. As much as I do not like him. So the fact that she also does not like him entertains me endlessly. It does feel a little bit unwarranted, but my dislike of him is also unwarranted. So, I guess it's fine. And yeah, essentially we want your like Eastern Army, but we don't need you. And yeah, she said, you might as well get lost. And this is when he sort of smiles to himself. And he says, why do you not think that I'm going to tell Fuhrer Bradley? And this old lady says, she assured me you weren't that kind of man. She finishes tying up a bouquet, asks for 35,000 cents, walks away looking like she has just sold him a single bouquet for this amount of money. But then when the camera pulls back, we do see that he indeed has bought her entire cart and he has no idea what to do with all of these flowers. Also, he asks, like, what her relationship is to Armstrong. And she says, I've been serving them for generations. And she takes her kerchief off. And she has the, like, single hair curl at the front of her face. This hair curl being their trademark is so weird. And I really like it. I really do. So, yeah, he says then it's safe to say that our closest allies invariably turn out to be the same people that we fought side by side with out on the battlefield. I do really like when he realizes how many flowers he has. There are a couple of girls standing nearby, and one of them calls him a freak, and the other one is like, she's looking at us. Oh, that's very funny. So, all right. Oh, and I should mention, too, that the soldiers that are in the tunnel, once they come across those two who are alive, they already had passed through the fucking slaughter that had been, like, you know, dropped ahead of them. There is pieces of metal that look like they have been completely sheared off in a way that's, like, impossible for a regular weapon. And these poor dudes who are like cowering on the tracks, just, one of them has blood dripping down his face. The other is missing a hand. So I don't know if it's like, I don't know, maybe neither of them is envy, but this just feels fishy to me. There's something that's just fishy. And this is when he says, listen, we have to get out of here. It's coming back. You've got to get rid of the lights, the shadow. Hey, and he just keeps screaming. And this is when we have it show up and then pull away. And then we go to the scene with Hawkeye. And Hawkeye immediately starts sweating because this kid, she got a vibe off him. She's just like, something is not right. And he gets sent to bed, and she has a continuing conversation with his mom in which she mentions he is related to his father, though. So he probably has some of his genes. I shouldn't brag about him, but I am very proud. And she leaves shaken, having heard that this kid is actually related to the Fuhrer. And she's just like, this is fucked up. We thought that Bradley was a test subject and doesn't have any family, so how is this even possible? And I got a weird feeling off him. And then all of a sudden, we hear, so you've put the pieces together. And in the shadows, we just see behind her 2 points of like red light as his eyes. And eventually the camera goes over and we like see more of him, his baggy pants and everything. But it is really like creepy in the background at first, how it's just the pinprick red eyes like a raccoon in headlights or something. And he says, because my stupid stepmother can't keep her mouth shut. And Hawkeye's like, that and the fact that you felt like a fucking psycho. You had like a bloodlust, so it wasn't just her. And she asks, what is your true identity? And he says, you've got some nerve to ask me a question like that, considering the circumstance. And as he says this, he is still standing in the shadow, and he is still behind her. He is a little behind her. Yeah. And all of those like creepy hand shadows begin stretching toward her, and she again is sweating quite a bit. And I also should mention that they do a weird doubling up of his voice, maybe even more than double, in order to give everything he says this sort of sense of the weird figure of blankness that we met inside the void, the portal. And I don't think that's necessarily to indicate that he is the figure inside the portal. It might be, but I don't think it's like necessarily that. it just gives him a really freaky sort of energy. And it's clear because he isn't like moving his lips sometimes that this is happening in her head to a degree as well. And she guesses maybe you're like gluttony. And then she corrects herself and is like, no, you have a kind of pressure coming off of you that he didn't have. And it's so weird because as he's doing all of this and approaching her with these shadows, he's still smiling the whole time, looking and not smiling in like a creepy, too wide, spooky, threatening smile. It's like a genuine, like kid smile. You know, it's like if you didn't hear him, you would never know how vicious he is being right now. And he says something like, I am a little bit fucking offended that you would try and put me anywhere near the same category as gluttony. I am pride, and I was the first homunculus. And then the camera pulls back really clearly, and we see all of these like eyes opening in all of the shadows around him. And Hawkeye, the poor thing, I think has realized not turning around and trying to be too confrontational is the safest thing. It's an interesting way to play this scene that she's not looking at him, but I feel like it actually works really well. There's not a great solid reason for it, but I think it's really, you know, partially it's just meant to be that like we don't want to be seen talking to each other out here either, the way that people will sit back to back in a booth when they're spies kind of thing, you know. So yeah, he says, are you trying to get information out of me? You are a courageous one, aren't you? Have you considered switching sides and joining us? And he sends the shadow all the way up the inside of her pant leg. And it comes up from under her collar and down from her sleeve in a way that is so invasive and really just straight disrespectful, and I don't like it at all. I don't like it. And one of the little hands reaches up and slices her face just to let her know, hey, these shadows, they're not just creepy. They're also extremely sharp and will cut you into many pieces if necessary. And she says, in a moment of extreme level-headedness, because that is what she is about, God damn it, it's wasteful to kill a hostage. And he immediately pulls all of the shadows back and is like, you know, that's true. You have a point. So, I'm going to leave you alone. But you should remember that I will be watching you all the time. Any shadow, I might be there. And that kind of thing this is an ability of a character in Dresden Files as well. That it turns out anywhere there is a shadow, he essentially has like eyes and ears and can be listening. And I just feel like that's really unfair. Like, that shouldn't be allowed. You know, I don't know. I was thinking about this too as well. Erica says, it's weird now to think about Salim writing that essay about how his father is his hero and reading it out loud to his parents, how that was basically just a show they put on for Mrs. Bradley. I was thinking about that too. And also like when the Elric brothers come for tea, and how I was thinking like their poor son doesn't know anything, and how they are like kind of pitying him for admiring his father so much. And it feels like they're safe until he comes home and sees that they're there. But turns out like they were never safe. Just the fact that like they were in the library and this kid, quote unquote, stumbles across them and is like, oh, he was such a fan. Oh, are you? Are you? Or are you keeping tabs on what the fuck they're doing? And are they already aware that the two of them are trying to understand this Shingi's version of allomancy? Not allomancy. That's Mistborn. Necromancy. That's the dead. Alchemy. That's the one. But there's this alkahestry. I kept wanting to say hemalurgy, which is also Mistborn. Guys, I have a lot of terms to keep straight here. So yeah, there's like just looking back at a variety of interactions with this kid, they become way creepier now, not because anybody was really under threat in particular, but because he knew so much more than you thought he knew in that scene. You know, it was just like, oh my God. So then we go to Kimberly and Eric, and they are talking about what his mission is going to be. And he's like, okay, so we've got 3 jobs that you've been sent from the Fuhrer. First, you need to hunt down Scar. All we need is for you to find him. Secondly, find Dr. Marco, who is with Scar, they think. And Ed is like, wait, why is that? And Kimberly is like, I didn't recall asking you to inquire about your mission. I am here to tell you what to do, and you're going to do it. So shut up. 3, they want you to, he wants you to carve a crest of blood. And Ed genuinely is like, wait, a what? And Kimberly says, it's just like what I did in Ishval. It's very simple. We kill everyone and soak the land with their blood. Guys, okay, look. I'm just going to say, if I were going to try to make this happen, I wouldn't approach it this way. That's all I'm saying. Don't go to this kid with an extremely strong sense of right and wrong and be like, we're going to kill everybody and soak the land with their blood. No. What you do is set something up to make him think that what he is doing is somehow justified, and find a way to like get him to take it upon himself to do a thing because his intentions are good, but what he's actually doing is deeply fucked up. Do I know how I would set that up? No, I do not. But I just don't think that this approach of coming and telling him straight up, we are going to commit mass murder, is the way to get him to do it. Like, even it just feels like the wrong approach. And Ed starts to yell that he would never, and Kimberly just puts a finger over his lips, and Ed sits down. And Kimberly says, did you really think you were going to join the military and then not have to kill anybody? And Ed says, I made a promise to myself that I wouldn't kill anybody. And Kimberly just says, how original of you. And for some reason, the how original of you really got me. I found that very funny. It's like combination, like condescending, but also a little bit like, word? Okay. And he says, do you know what it is that they're doing? Why are you even on their side? And basically, Kimberly is like, I'm just kind of curious to see what would happen. Like, we've got humans, and then we've got homunculi who think that they're the next step in, like, the evolution of people. And I don't know if they're right or not, but I am really curious to see if they can win. And Ed is like, but you're a human. Why do you want to side with them? And he says, because they've given me complete freedom to use alchemy however I want. And Ed says that he's out of his mind, and Kimberly just says, well, I mean, maybe. He doesn't even really, like, deny it. He says, my standards do differ from society's, which is, like, one way to put it. And then he says, but if I survive this battle, oh my God, I'm sorry guys, this thing froze. My standards do differ from society's for some reason. The mildness of that, I find that very funny. But if I survive this battle, then the world will have chosen my sanity over yours. I stake my being, the core of my existence. This is what I'm willing to bet on the outcome of this battle. And in a way, I can sort of understand what he means. He is awful and wrong. But there is a part of me that, like, understands the sort of morbid fascination. Just being like, I just want to see who wins. Like, I mean, they are very, very powerful. What if they're right? And they're letting me do all kinds of shit. I'm just saying, you know? Oh, that's true. Erica says, I also think Kimberly gets off on telling Ed that he's under direct orders to go against his morals. I 100% buy that. That's fair, Erica. Yeah. Yeah, that's the psychological shit that he's doing. He probably is excited for the moment that fucking Winry realizes that she's been had as well. Because he just likes people to know that he can exert that kind of power over them because he's just a douche. Truly, guys, though. Just so, like, it's just like what I did in Ishval. Just soak the land with their blood. I don't know why, but that got to me. That was really, like, that was so intense. And yeah, he mentions, like, the surprise at Ed being as selfless as he seems, and says, like, I really did think all alchemists were just sort of self-centered. So I'm going to test you. I have something that you might want. And he puts a philosopher's stone on the table. Now, I want to mention, this is a sub-grade philosopher's stone, as we now know. The two of them are trying to do something in getting their bodies back that I am not convinced this stone could handle. Because as we now have found out, they come in different strengths and, like, effectivenesses. And I don't know. But it remains a moot point. He really thinks that this is a temptation. And it is for just an instant. But Ed and Al, both being highly aware of what it takes to make one of these, are both like, I don't think so. No, I don't even want to, like, involve that in our quest anymore. I know that's what we started wanting. But we think we have found an alternative. And I don't want to mess with something that has the lives of, like, millions of people in it. So Ed begins to lay out his terms to Kimberly and says, I need to talk to Al and to Winry. And Kimberly's like, why do you need to bring her into it? And Ed is like, because she doesn't understand the way that she's involved. And I will, like, if I'm going to do what you are asking me, I'm not going to lie to her about it. That is where I'm going to draw the line. And Kimberly is like, all right, but I'm going to be there to make sure that you don't go too far in the explanation. You can tell her some, but not all. And so that's part of why the conversation later goes the way it does. Ed explains to her about her being a hostage and suddenly realizing the way that she's been played. And then he tells Al the way that they've been bribed. And they have a moment of Al jumping and, like, kind of jumping to the conclusion, being like, you can't take a philosopher's stone. You know how they're, and Ed interrupts him and is like, I know, Al. And finally, Al realizes, but we need him to think that I'm doing this, okay? So Al just says, do what you want. And in a pretty, like, convincing moment of, I'm going to, like, pretend to go along with this kind of thing. And I thought that that was well done. And I really enjoy, again, how quick Al can be, because he feels like such a sweetie pie that I am tempted to also think of him as, like, naive. And it isn't actually true. He is, like, there's a little bit of innocence there, but he's not a fool, you know? So, yeah, I really liked this moment. And Ed leaves and heads out, and Al explains to Winry once Kimberly is gone, I don't think Ed is doing anything of the sort. I think that we are meant to think that he is, or at least Kimberly is. So as they're leaving, Ed is telling Kimberly, all right, I'll do this stuff, but the first thing that I want to do is take down Scar because he killed Winry's parents, which is a decent reason. It's not super convincing. Kimberly there's like this one flaw in this episode is that he capitulates a little bit too much to too many things. He lets Ed talk to Al and Winry. He then lets Ed dictate which of the tasks he's going to do first. Then Winry comes up with like an excuse to come with them, and Kimberly lets that happen as well. And I am willing to accept it, but it does feel a little bit like Winry isn't as on top of his shit with them as he might otherwise be. And I'm going to put that down to them being so young that he underestimates them. And thinks like, I think it's a combo of he underestimates them because they're young, and he has less patience for them. Because the way that Winry gets herself wedged in there is by telling Ed she like wants to keep an eye on his like automail because she's never like done anything like this before. And her and Ed get into bickering over her being a workaholic in a way that feels really like immature and petty. And it feels like Kimberly basically goes, oh my God, fine, you can come, just because he doesn't want to deal with their antics, you know? So I'm willing to accept it, but it does feel a little bit convenient that he's so easily compromised so many times, you know? So yeah, Winry, like, again, another moment of what I really like, which is the unspoken understanding between characters who know each other really well. Winry, when she gets in and starts, like, arguing with Ed about it, it's really clear that he understands what she's trying to do, and he engages her in the bickering to make it more believable and a little bit more tiresome as well, because I think he realizes that might be some of like where Kimberly's Achilles heel lies. So yeah, it's a nice moment to see them working together without having to completely explain themselves. It's so often a character misunderstanding somebody, thinking that they're being betrayed, that I will see in various fiction where even as a reader, I'm like, they're not betraying you. This is part of a thing. Can you not see that? And I really like getting to enjoy characters who are insightful enough to tell that's what's happening, because they should be, because they are friends with one another and they have a relationship that should lead to this sort of understanding, you know? So yeah, I just thought that was like a good moment between the two of them. And I will never get, like, guys, the gag of Al getting in the car and that whole side of the car hitting the ground is never going to get old. Al in these little cars is so funny still. I need them to build an automail where Al has like some tires. Like he's got basically those little roller skate sneakers. You know those ones, what are they called? Because he can't be riding in these cars. Just let him like lasso himself to the back and get dragged along. But the bit every time where the driver is just like, what the fuck? And then looks in the rearview mirror and sees Al. That is very funny to me. And Winry squeezing herself in and telling Al to scoot over as she's like crushing Ed. Oh, it's good stuff. So yeah, Kimberly tries to say to Winry that she can't come. And it's sort of interesting. I didn't really take this into account until just now. But Kimberly is still playing the nice guy in some ways to Winry. I don't know if he realizes how much she knows, even though she's been told that she's a hostage. It feels like maybe he's still sort of trying to like do good cop with her. So that might be part of why he eventually gives in anyway. I don't know. Heelys. Thank you, Candace. Heelys. I kept wanting to say like spoolies. That is not anything. So yeah, the episode basically like ends with the two of them arguing with each other, and then Armstrong looking down on them from the gates of from Briggs, and looking very concerned because I think she recognizes the state that everybody is in right now. And Ed warns Winry under his breath, this could get really bad, you know. And Winry just says, I know, but I can't just be sitting around anymore, which I very, very much identify with. Sometimes, even if it's not like the smart move, you want to do something just to do something. And that's not necessarily like a good instinct to have, but I understand the urge to just literally take any action at all, especially considering that she is often left on the sidelines of things. So, yeah, so that is the end of the episode. Guys, I can't believe that this bitch Pride has been under our noses the whole time. Which also, like, recontextualizing other stuff, I'm thinking about the scene with Wrath walking around and basically getting, like, what's the word I want? Like, reprimanded by Pride. And there being a sense of just like, you're kind of losing your edge, old man. And knowing now that it was the kid who's pretending to be his son makes that scene sort of even funnier. Like, it really does feel like, okay, boomer, even though we know that he is older than his dad. But, you know, there's still that sort of energy because he is so... And the whole thing with the pressure that's coming off of him and the way that he is... There's just a manifestation of the like eyes and the teeth. I don't know. Is he the thing in the void? And is that what he's doing with body parts? Is that why he's taking them so that he can like create other homunculi? But Al's entire body is in there, and he hasn't done that with Al. So I don't know what to think of that. Like, I don't know if that's even like a related thing. You know what I'm saying? I don't know, guys. I'm just all over the place on this. I'm so unsure of what the motive still is, really, that I can't hazard a guess at a lot of this stuff. Erica says, I think it also brings up the Twilight problem. If you're hundreds, maybe more of years old, why are you going to school? You know what? Maybe he's not. I'm still like, maybe he's just fucking pretending to be going to school, and his mom is just accepting that he's getting straight A's, and he's just forging all of his fucking report cards and everything. Although his mom strikes me as the type that would definitely go to like the PTA and the parents' nights. So she would have to have conversations with his teachers and stuff. So probably that's why you got to keep up appearances, because mom is involved. You know what I mean? So, okay. Michael says, one pun for the day. Bradley and Salim are hum-uncle us and hum-nephew us. Toodaloo, motherfuckers.
was an Unspoiled Network podcast.